And we're back for the 14th episode. Today I have had this idea this morning of a kind of rhythmic tonal piece. And honestly, it's a real vague idea of what's in my head. I think I just want to start putting a few notes in there and see where we get. When sketching, it can be kind of tough in the beginning, especially if you don't have a real solid idea. If you just start from scratch, it can be a bit scary, honestly. Hopefully, if nothing else, some of these sketches are showing that, well, even if you start from zero, if you spend enough time tweaking and messing around, you can eventually come out with something. Okay. Maybe we'll try just a quick cheap trick, as I like to say. That creates a kind of percussive feel. Yeah, let's animate that. Whoops. Wrong button. Still working on memorizing my keyboard shortcut from the other day. Cool. Now let's get our recording happening. And obviously the volume is a bit too steady. Good, the tremolo helps, but it's also it's one thing I like to do when trying to build up a rhythmic section is just play around with the volume curves. And sometimes it takes a bit of finagling, a bit of pulling teeth, as they say, where I grew up in the South. Like pulling teeth. Which means not easy, but takes a bit of time till you get it. And let's pull this thing off of, I still want it on the grid. I think when working with rhythmic concepts, I think it's a great idea to work on the grid a lot more. Composition idea. Obviously, we could have this thing like I'm doing here, fade in and fade out, modulate in and out. I also am hearing a different chord here. And even a little beep. I wonder what a little beep would sound like every now and then. Beep. Too much of a tail on that one. Maybe a separate track will do. as much as I love to try and be really compact and make as much bang happen out of one track as possible, beep, yeah, something like that, beep. Maybe a little more textured, but let's, yeah. Maybe only every two measures. Let's see what this sounds like. I think that's too obvious. Let's try. Also, an idea I have is to really high up play with very tight. Well, I like that. It's a nice, super minimal. So we could obviously use follow actions here, or we could, I think, I should say more obviously, we could just draw out a bunch of these, 1, 2, 3, and maybe every fourth. Or fifth, if we want to be more off the norm. I guess I did that on this clip here. Let's try it. So let's see, let's move this to the fifth measure. Pull this clip down. Let's work from this clip from now on, since we've got more of an idea going inside of it. So we've got this volume modulation here. I think I also want to automate. I'm not sure what, I'm never totally sure what the right step is, so undo that until I just start dropping stuff in and listening and trying to hear the ideas. Action, reaction. I guess that's all anyone can do when making music is make leaps and then fix when necessary. Good news being, you can leap as much as you want in here and no one's going to die. Totally safe place. Been enjoying this algorithm lately. Basically splits the operator in two, where you have A and B working together, modulating each other, and then C and D as a separate path modulating each other. I like that bit of texture in there. That noise has a nice snow feel to it. Almost like a percussive hi-hat happening somewhere in there. And we haven't even played with filters or EQs yet. I think I want to modulate an EQ. This is obviously where our principal notes are happening, and they seem a bit too steady or repetitive. Obviously, when you're working with a rhythmic sketch like this, you want some level of repetition. I think the trick is finding the balance on where do you want the repetition to occur and where do you want the modulation to occur. And it's like a dance to create a piece that doesn't wear itself out over 5 minutes. Let's play with a delay. Kind of like that phasing a bit. All right, so I had an idea earlier. I had several ideas earlier. Well, hopefully I'll be able to remember them all and get to them all. And this, oh, yeah, words, just elusive sometimes. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of different generative ideas I could use here for this little high-pitched rhythmic bit, but I think I'm going to instead try to just craft it out a little bit. That's the thing about generative music. You have to learn to give up control because there's a lot of randomness. Oh, I guess I didn't paste this properly. So now we have, oh, I see. So let's try to quantize everything, or maybe just quantize these notes. I think I'm okay with these little top high pitched being slightly off the grid. and maybe some higher notes here. Let's just see what happens. Not bad. Need some volume. Velocity control volume action. And I believe it would sound cool. Maybe cooler. Duplicate this tin here, and I'm not copying and pasting things properly. That's okay. Maybe because my grid was turned off. Now this is obviously a more lighthearted sounding thing. I want to give a shot to playing with something a bit more doesn't take much to transform the whole vibe, does it? That's a lot to take in. But if we just make it very short. Super short, shorter. Sounds like a little chirping bird. Still not convinced about this melody. Maybe we have too many notes happening. Let's pull out these. Kind of like that for for some reason. Play with the waves on this one. Very early 2000s sounding. Not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of great music that came out of that era, honestly. Some of my favorites, most influenced by a lot of that Raster Noton, Mill Plateau label stuff. Curious what a really tight reverb would sound like here. Nice, kind of softens things a little bit. We did lose a lot of volume when I pulled these down here. I like those snaps, they sound kind of warm. Thinking a bit of a tight nice. I like that. That metal sound has a nice smooth shiny quality to it. And this is a piece that could be developed as a lot of automation across the timeline. In fact, I think maybe now is a good time to play with some of those ideas. Maybe just one more layer first before we go over to the timeline side. Just a little bit of texture, perhaps. All this texture does not sound very textural, but it's not hard to make a texture happen with a random after an arpeggiator that's got that high of a especially if we pull the pitch way high up. Get our volume in there. In fact, I want to go ahead and this as my default. I do like the really high-end stuff I'm hearing coming through. You can see there's a lot of really tweaky high stuff around the 10K region. Cool. Randomness definitely adds a lot of cool variation in there, generative variation. When you have these really high, tweaky sounding frequencies, you can do a lot of interesting stuff with some of the distortions afterwards. Let me pull this velocity out really quick. I think we lost a lot of goodness there. I guess we lost a lot of goodness because I turned this off for some reason. That is some harsh high end right there. I'm going to make a low shelf. Just pull down. There's a lot of bass coming through that. Interesting. And then I'm gonna classic tried and true tremolo. Maybe a little tight delay, like a slappish sounding delay. We'll definitely want to modulate . Gotta have some textures in there, honestly. Little sounds moving around in the background. I love that stuff. These little, almost out of nowhere, random little details. Helps break up any kind of monotony. Obviously, some sections you don't want that, and I do spend a lot of time on my songs when I'm polishing and finishing them up, trying to tame a lot of these little textures and noises. I love just all kinds of layers. And it can get a little out of hand and make the finishing and finalizing process of songs a bit tedious. But as I say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I guess it does make you burn out, though. I will say I'm in a process of recuperating from finishing a lot of albums up, and the finishing process, that whole tedious listening and eliminating little bits and pieces here and there and listening over and over and over again, that'll wear you out. Wears me out. But sometimes you just got to take breaks and then get back to it, even if those breaks take years. All right. So I'm curious what the best way to start this off would be. We could obviously have this first layer we started off with for this sketch. You know, there's enough fun movements and things happening there. This would make a good starting point. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Oftentimes when I'm building sketches, I like to have my tracks in order of context in terms of like how they would make the most sense being built up here. In this case, I think the texture would sound good coming in second. Maybe the bass and beat. But let's just hit record and see what happens. All right, so really, as far as I was hearing and feeling, it seems that that amount of those, you know, that many layers and changes, that's about all the amount of what we could say across, you know, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Obviously, if we add more layers in, we'll get a lot more time, I think, more interest happening so that We could make it last longer. Also, one thing is I could play with the automations more and make the run of it make more sense or be more interesting. Some minimalists will say, well, you know, you could just make this thing go on for 8 minutes like you had been doing. But I think that, you know, there's a fine line between copying out and being lazy and actually putting in effort. I think minimalism doesn't have to be, you know, all that boring or uninteresting or uninspired or lacking of. You will have this noise come in after the texture. Maybe see what this sounds like. Bringing in some power there. Let's dial it back. That's not the one I wanted to play with. Maybe we'll just end with this straight note. We could get in here and one thing I like to do is completely change things up. You know, what makes a song interesting sometimes is when it throws you unexpected curves. Sometimes it's nice when the song just does the same thing for 8 minutes, but as artists, I think it behooves us to try and think of ideas. right, this, I'm gonna pull out some of this volume stuff and get a more straighter delete these blank spots for our texture. I've added that in so that we could keep our automations moving along without notes coming through. Bit of a breakdown here, or maybe just a good excuse to go into a more experimental place with this. Which the grain delay is, you know, somewhat of a cheap trick. I'm going to move some of these things out of the way, I think, for this timeline. It is best to have all the space we can get. And I'm working on a 1080p screen, so that's not a lot of space. The main studio has a 4K screen, which is so much nicer for this kind of stuff. Actually, 2 monitors to be able to have this timeline running across. Let's try another note in there. Turn this follow off. Sometimes that thing gets really annoying. Give me a MIDI clip. And auto pan, but this time I want to put several different straight steps. Going straight into Minimalville here. And if we listen back to this whole thing, I'm guessing that, you know, the timing of all this, we may want to have it last a little longer before we break things down. Could just be, you know, a fun and an odd outro. 3:45, I mean, .345 isn't a terrible length, honestly. Sometimes shorter is better. But it's a fun challenge to try to see if you can go, you know, for a long amount of time. That is part of the art form, is knowing when to end. Listen to what this sounds like. want this volume a little quieter. And as I was making a lot of adjustments while recording, I am just hitting all kinds of random stuff at the same time. Let's go ahead and consolidate that. Clean things up a bit. Yeah, this almost just sounds like a good outro section. We could even add some time to the beginning and try and sculpt an intro, like some crazy noise. Let's play with pulling in our texture layer. Maybe I didn't want to add that much time. Let's pull the tremolo down. We could obviously do some dramatic nonsense, build up. Oftentimes I like to try to think of a little more original ideas. Well, that wasn't too dramatic, over dramatic. I think if get this to fade in a little more subtly, that will be nice. Maybe not 100% fade in. And I'm hearing a reverb come in here. A bit more volume push before it dies out. Gotta get rid of that. We'll have this just hard shut off here. Same with this. It's always a trick to remember. Turn to, you know, if you're gonna add a bunch of effects along the way, to make sure to turn everything off so you don't ruin everything else down the line. use a bit more stereo activity. I think I want this other notes sequence to be sort of the harbinger of this panning. Just a little subtle texture. Yeah, it sounds like it wants to keep going to me, but I think for the sake of time and this just being kind of a sketch, we'll let it die out there. We could obviously duplicate a section in here and just play around with some of the automations to make it, not so identical to the other part we duped from. Can also hear a bit of a maybe some more volume shaping in here. It's a bit heavy-handed, that reverb. Let's try from here. I think we want triplets here. I liked how that kind of faded in. Let's give it a random velocity. Let's put the overall volume of this down. I'm going to change the default on this. I just do not like the out-of-the-box beam. Although in in a lot of cases, this beam algo has been super useful. Got too many windows going on. What I've just done is pretty cheap thrill, or cheap trick, cheap thrill TBD. And we could keep the song going if we wanted to. After our silly little breakdown. I would obviously, I think, want to switch this up. Change up the pattern somehow on this second run of it. Because just blatant repeating almost feels like plagiarizing yourself. Well, I think there's no reason to not try and switch it up and make it more interesting for everybody trying to listen in. So as you can see from what I've been doing, just a bit of automation, you can sculpt the composition, which I think is a real fun way to compose. I think I want this to just cut off. Obviously, sculpting with automation, composing with automation isn't always really the way to go. It's a bit of a challenge. It can be hard to track down why certain things aren't working. You really have to be able to know what your effects are doing, and when you drop stuff in, you kind of have to remember what you dropped in and where. It's a bit of a mental juggling match. I wanted this to be a lot more ricochet-y. Maybe we want to turn on this. Okay, well, it's not exactly what I have in my head, but so there you have it. Sculpting with automation, working with just MIDI and automation and lots of effects. As far as these more experimental and synthy sounding styles of music, this is a really, in my opinion, fun way to go in terms of composition. It can be a daunting to the unwary, the newbie. But even in just trying a little bit of these techniques in your compositions, can go a long way. I almost feel like I want to add another layer after that dramatic. And maybe after the crazy reverb swells, when this extra percussion needs to come in. There you have it, folks. Definitely works with this video. I almost want to export out this video and you know, but this isn't kind of music that I really do and like to put out under my own name. It's always a trick when, as an artist, what kind of style, what kind of sound are you gonna have as your sound? Is it gonna just be all over the map, or are you gonna try to be more monochromatic about it? personal brand politics. I think that's a whole topic of discussion we'll save for never. Not a fun topic. So anyway, I have gone on and on with this one, but obviously sketching things out on the timeline is a little bit more time consuming. Unless, of course, you set everything up here just right. But that also takes a lot of time, to where all you have to do is hit record and perform it out from here. That's a fun challenge also. I like to do a mix of both. I usually start all my songs here, track them out in here, and then that's about 40 to 50% of the way, and then I spend the rest of the time in the timeline listening to what's going on and adding and subtracting based on what I feel and hear. Is happening, from the clips I recorded from here. And then once I feel 100% comfortable with that, then it's about 10 to 20 more passes, listening very carefully, making a lot of notes. I like to just add a locator at sections. Needs more something here. Usually I'll be more specific with myself, with my ideas. More high end, more bass, etc. And I'll do these passes 10 separate times. I'll have all kinds of notes along a timeline. That's the not fun part of finishing up a song, but I find highly necessary for putting out not crap. Because God knows there's just enough rushed out crap. But when you're just sketching, it's great to not have that kind of a deadline or sense of urgency. Just, having fun and trying to just take her easy, as they say. I hope you enjoyed this one, and until next time.